Okay.
Hello, good
Yep.
people. Hello, good people. Let us start off with today's work. The session for today is about what are the right resources for prep. When I say right resources, these are right resources as per my current state of knowledge and whatever different materials and YouTube channels and different sorts of things that I'm aware of. I would want this to be a two-way communication-based session wherein I provide you with some information and I would love for you to come back and give me a lot of information, as in uh, if there are things that you think you need further clarity on, please go ahead and ask. You can raise your hand anytime during the meeting. As in when you raise your hand, I will ask you to unmute, then we can engage in a conversation. Apart from that, at a later point of time, there will be a dedicated Q&A session on whatever other questions you may have. So let's start off. The first thing, I don't know how many of you know me. I am Arvind Shankar. I have been teaching for over 13 years now. I started teaching back in 2011 for CAT Prep, of course. I'm currently working at Anastasia Academy. I am a commerce graduate. I have done BCom for my graduation. So unlike a lot of QA and DILR mentors in the industry, I am not a science buff. I am not very I'm not from engineering background or from science background. I'm from commerce background, and that is all you need to know about me. Other things that I've done in life are fairly irrelevant. So I like to start off my meetings by simply asking, you know the topic for this meeting, you know everything that I intend to cover. Is there anything? Are there any specific questions that you would want answered? Let's create a list for that. Are there any specific questions that you are looking forward to be answered in this session? If yes, you can either send that over in chat or you can unmute and tell me what are specific things that you would want answered in this session. It only works if I have two-way communication, people. Me randomly speaking to you over and over again without having any sort of feedback loop is not really useful. You have absolutely no questions. You have no questions at all. Okay, we have no questions. We move the next page then. What I am planning to cover for today's session is simply this: the stages in CAT prep. There are different stages, different phases that a lot of us would be in. Some of us would be at the stage of right at the beginning. Some of us would be perhaps repeating. Some of us would be somewhere in between those two phases where we're not exactly at the beginning, but then we are not entirely at the level where we can directly jump to books and everything. So what are the different stages in CAT prep? And depending upon what stage of CAT prep you're in, the subsequent tasks that you need to engage in, they would change heavily. Then there would be discussion on resources overview. There are certain opinions, certain ideas that I believe are extremely important that you should be aware of and you should pay heed to. Then the different section-wise resources, what you should be referring to. Then there is some information about daily practice sources. There are certain places where you can get daily questions for daily practice, where all you can refer to that. Then eventually certain practice targets, and finally a Q&A session, depending upon sources specific for improving quant understanding. Okay, Palash, I will try to answer that question to the best of my ability. In practice targets, when I say practice targets, I mean there are, given that there are different phases, in different phases, what all should you be covering, or what are the numbers, minimum benchmarks that you should be hitting so that you are at a level that you feel whatever you've done is good enough. It does not necessarily translate into it guarantees you a huge percentile, but at least it gets you to the point where you can be confident, okay, if I've done this much, I am not lagging behind. And then finally, the Q&A session. I don't know how useful that will be given that people are not asking questions. Let's see. So the first page, see the different stages in prep. Perhaps people at the absolute beginning of the preparation cycle. The first thing you have to do is theory coverage. While CAT does not have a specified syllabus, CAT has never come out with a list of topics. Okay, these are the things that you have to necessarily study. What it does do is provide you with question papers. Based on those question papers, the institutes, the teachers, whichever bodies you are engaging with, they have come up with their list of things that you should be covering. Now, the uniqueness about this cat prep industry is, see, for any other industry, if you were going to buy a certain product or a service, you would know beforehand that this is what you want from that product or service. When it comes to education, it is more you would need to have blind faith with whoever your provider is, that they would do the analysis of what is required and they would provide it to you. So for that purpose, you need to be reposing your faith in slightly more reputable sources. You cannot be going to XYZ sources. You can you can turn to the biggest players in the market, and also even the smaller ones that have reasonable credibility built up over some time. From there, you need to ensure that your theory coverage, whether it is Quant or VARC or DILR, whatever it is, it gets entirely done. First step in preparation has to be doing the theory coverage. Second stage has to be doing the practice. When I say practice, see, when you're doing theory coverage, you would have something like daily sheets or daily tasks assigned to you. Of course, that is still part of theory coverage. Practice is outside of classroom, outside of class sheets and work that has been assigned to you, extra work that you should be doing. While this can simultaneously happen with theory coverage, ideally, this is a separate task in itself. Some people, I'm hoping, would be at this stage right now. After you've done certain benchmarks for practice, my recommendation is you start taking up mocks and sectionals. The testing phase of your preparation starts. And of course, while the testing phase starts, you still have to be engaging in practice. You cannot possibly jump over and stop doing practice altogether. The practice part happens simultaneously with Quants. And then, of course, there is the final last lab. Let's say this is 1 month prior to the CAT, where you, by now, you've gone through so many questions, you've gone through so many ideas, you've gone through so many tests that you recognize what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. You are currently engaging with material with the view of maximizing your score in the eventual exam, instead of just going through the motions without realizing what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Some of the weirdest preparation cycles include people experimenting with different mock strategies in the last 5 days, 6 days, because by then, if you're not certain, it is basically you're playing dice with your chances of securing a good percentile in the exam. In the last lap, it has to be slightly different. For today, the discussion I've limited it to the middle two phases, and even within the middle two phase, only the practice part of it. Let's see what should happen. Resources overview. See, depending upon at what stage of preparation you're at, let's say you're an absolute beginner, you're an absolute fresher, you're doing everything from basic for the first time, then the advice for you is, I'm also assuming people are attending the session, we are not enrolled anywhere, we are completely preparing by our own self, we are not enrolled in any other institute. If you are, even then, cover any standard set of books from your coaching, assuming your coaching is one of those respectable players in the market that does provide you with adequate support and material coverage. Or if you're doing it by yourself, you can do it from Time, CL, or IMS. These are the three stalwarts of our cat prep industry. They have been in this market for a long period of time. While not the entirety of their material is top notch, but they are certainly miles ahead of a lot of new players who claim to be revolutionizing stuff and instead are fairly misrepresenting what needs to be covered. But this is a fairly good source. This is a fairly good source for basic theory coverage. Fairly good resource you can engage with. Once the theory coverage is done, but you can do it during your theory coverage portion or after entirety if it is done. Engage with topic tests. What I mean by topic tests is, let's say you've done ratios in class or you've done percentages in class. Then take up a few topic tests related to ratios and percentages, depending upon what benchmark you're setting. For instance, at A, let's say if you're done with a particular topic, there are topic tests, and then I expect people to be having at least 60% rate of return from the test that they're appearing in. That means you're reasonably sound in that topic. You can move on to the next one. You can never ever go after 100% accuracy or 100% rate of return, because 100% rate of return means you have absolutely mastered everything, which is unlikely to happen in a short duration of time, and it is unlikely to happen even for a long duration of time. I cannot guarantee 100% rate of return, a 60% rate of return. And that, of course, the 60% rate of return is based on the sort of questions I know are present in the test, and I know is the questions are not absolutely basic. It's not like A is to B is 2 is to 3 and B is to C is 1 is to 5. Then what would be the ratio of A is to C? That is not the level of topic test that you'll be engaging in, because that would be basic concept exercise or absolutely beginner level questions. Topic test would be slightly more advanced questions, slightly more questions that would require you to engage in amalgamating concepts from different areas and then applying them in order to arrive at the answer. What you do in your topic test, they will tell you from the topic test, you would have two sorts of results. Either you're hitting those required benchmarks or you're not hitting those required benchmarks. If you are hitting those required benchmarks, then you can move to mocks and tests and all sorts of testing for you can begin. If you're not hitting those required benchmarks, the task is to go back to theory coverage. In case you don't go back, in case you're not hitting those targets, then it simply means your input or your comprehension level in that topic is not up to par. And the next step has to be, you have to go back to theory coverage, whether it is in the form of notes, whether it is in the form of classes, whatever style you choose to prefer. But then you have to go back to the theory coverage in order to shore up your understanding of the topics. Okay. Once this is taken care of, you have to engage in simultaneous practice from respectable resources. When I say respectable resources, there are previous year mocks. We live in a day and age where people have access to a lot of previous year mocks. When I say previous year mocks, it would be the Time CL IMS, whatever resource you can get your hands upon, you can engage in practice with that. And there are also some YouTube channels which have a collection of good questions, collection of respectable practice material. Now, the YouTube channels come up later when I talk of section-wise resources. The YouTube channels that I have mentioned are the ones that I am aware of, and I would give them a passing grade. I would say that what is present there is respectable. I would love for you to tell me what are some of the other YouTube channels that you are aware of that you think would be that should be included in the list, because as informed as I am, I cannot possibly be entirely informed. Maybe there are certain gems that I am unaware of. So in case there are other channels or other places that you think should be included in the list, please make sure you mention that. For VARC prep, theory coverage, material from any respectable institute. When I say material from any respectable institute, I mean doing the RC portion of it, then the parajumbles, then odd one out, then fill in the blanks in the paragraph form, then summary, then vocabulary and grammar and critical reasoning and everything. Do all of that. Then for practice, there is this wonderful resource, RCs by Sujit Kumar. Sujit Kumar, to the best of my knowledge, is a faculty member from IMS. He had come up with a collection of RCs. The resources that you should be avoiding, I also mentioned resources you should be avoiding. For some reason, RC 99 by Aristotle has become very famous. It is a wonderful resource if you're preparing for GMAT. If you're preparing for CAT, it is not a very good resource. Or RC 1000, again, wonderful if you're preparing for GMAT or you're preparing for LSATs. These are extremely good resources if you're preparing for GMAT or LSATs, but they are not good resources when you're preparing for CAT, because here the answer obtaining, the explanation available at most places is very subpar. Additionally, the question type or the nature of the passages included is not at par with what you would expect to face in CAT. these give you a false sense of achievement that, oh, we are doing so much, we are covering so much, we have done so many RCs, but then those RCs are perhaps 20% of the difficulty level of what you would be facing in the actual exam. So they don't really give you a huge leg up. They don't really give you a huge leg up when you're considering your CAT. Then of course, past year mocks is also excellent. Past year mocks. Certain YouTube channels that do provide you with good practice content is Word Pandit. I hope you're aware of Word Pandit. This is run by Chadda sir, and this is a VARC focused institute based out of Chandigarh, if I'm not wrong. Then there is a YouTube channel by the name of The Verbal Mentor. He is a former colleague of mine. He used to work in the same institute as I do, and decent practice material available there. What this channel has is a wonderful collection of RCs in which the mentor is going through the passage in entirety, giving their interpretation, then they move on to questions. To the best of my memory, last I checked, there were around 60, 70 RCs done in that fashion, which I believe would be extremely useful for people. Then on Takshila, there is this wonderful playlist based around what all theory coverage of RCs is provided there. And then on 2IM, there is the Bharat's breeding list, which is very popular in the cat circles. And then there are also other practice materials. Apart from this, if there are any other YouTube channels that you're aware of, or resources that you're aware of, I would love for you to mention in the chat box so that I can list them out here. Anyone who watches this at a later point of time would have access to those things. Here, I'd also like to make a disclaimer. If you're ever learning, see, YouTube channels are great. YouTube channels are absolutely great. But it is highly unlikely that any YouTube channel will provide you all the content for end-to-end preparation. Not because they wouldn't want to, perhaps they wouldn't want to either, because it would impact the business. But a bigger challenge is, see, learning happens in a two-way communication setup. It cannot possibly happen with teacher simply speaking. A challenge that I'm sure as students you would have understood. Let's say you have a problem with point A for the teacher or whoever is preparing that video. It appears to be like the simplest point in the world, and they move on from that. So while theory and many YouTube channels, in fact, many institutes also do this wonderful thing. Anything that is deemed to be difficult, anything that is deemed to be difficult to explain, they tend to avoid it in entirety while making YouTube videos about it, which is why you will find very few YouTube videos on fill in the blanks para completion right now. You would have a lot of practice material available for that. You would not have a lot of theory coverage available for that. So when you do turn to YouTube channels, don't turn to YouTube channels for learning theory. Theory coverage has to be done from classes or material. After that, practice can be done from YouTube channels. We as a species have become very, very accustomed to video input. We have moved away from doing, let's say, book-based learning. A lot of us have, as in, for a lot of people, Google searches aren't the norm anymore. The norm has turned to let's do YouTube search. We will do everything on YouTube, and that is fine. If that is where the world is heading, that is fine. But then know the limits where YouTube searches are useful and where YouTube searches are not useful. Theory coverage from YouTube channels is not great. Absolutely not great. At this time, perhaps there are also certain books available in market. There are certain books available in market. Let's say from Inakshi Upadhyay ma'am and the like, Arvind Sharma sir's life. So not that it is her only achievement, but that identification is easier for people to capture. So that book is excellent, so long as you are treating that book as a practice resource. If you're treating that book as a let's learn English in entirety, that wouldn't do the trick. See, remember, when you're going through practice material, the objective is I want to I want to train myself, I want to go through the motion over and over and over again instead of learning everything from basics to advanced. Practice material is only supposed to reinforce things that you already know or at least do the course correction. It is not supposed to be teaching you everything from basic to advanced. So hopefully you understand the distinction between the two, what is practice material and what is theory material. For DILR prep, again, you would have to cover basics from any respectable institute, and the best practice material for DILR is past year mocks. Avoid books altogether after basic coverage. For DILR especially, what has happened is up until 2014, 2015, CAT and most other exams, they gave us DILR sets in which you were only tested on one particular topic. So let's say if there was a question on bar graph, the only idea you needed to be aware of while solving such questions was bar graph. And books have been around for longer than that. Within books, they have divided the entire practice material, everything that is available to you according to topics. Yes, covering those basic topics is important because they would serve as bedrock for you to solve better things in future. The problem is those books have not really been updated to the level that they become relevant. And now what is happening is when people go through those books, they become fairly proficient at DI, but the sort of thinking that is needed for LR does not get tested at all. And the entire purpose of practice becomes defeated. So avoid books altogether after basic coverage, then get to doing mixed practice. Topic-based practice for DILR is never ever going to help because not at the basic stage. At the basic stage, do topic-based practice. After the basic stage is done, you would need to be able to learn and train your brain to think of multiple topics, multiple setups at the same time, and utilize the learnings from different topics while solving the questions simultaneously. Some of the more popular YouTube channels that have good material. We have Aptitude Jam, this is by Pranav Pantasar, and wonderful sets, lots of questions there. A lot of them are moderate difficulty sets, which I believe would be best for YouTube purpose also and best for learning purpose also. Then there are sets at Elites Grid. They have their own playlist. I've deliberately listed out channels which have dedicated playlist where DILR sets are present. Then Quantifiers. This is an institute based out of Chandigarh. Then there is Rodha from Ravi Prakash sir. Then there is my own institute, Anesthesis Academy. We have a few playlists in which DILR is getting covered. One is the daily DILR playlist with 200 sets. Then there was a playlist by the name of Prime Puzzles in which certain sets are covered. And currently we are doing daily practice with Conundrum Carousel, in which one set per weekday is being provided. In case you want to practice, these are respectable sources for DILR prep. Another point I'd like to add, very often people engage in the unruly habit of judging the quality of practice material. While that is fine and good, but then you need to have some sort of standing in order to be passing judgment on things. Right now, the most people in the current phase you're at, the current stage you're at, what you should be doing is whatever comes your way, go through it, give it 20, 25, whatever number of days, and see if it is providing you with some benefit instead of passing judgment on things that you have absolutely no idea of. So lots of times, lots of places and lots of people, this is not good material, this is not worthwhile, this is not useful, based on simple surface level judgment, which is not ideal. I move on to QA prep now. Theory coverage is theory coverage and practice material and books altogether after basic coverage. The advice remains the same because again, the QA, the kind of QA that gets asked in the paper now is no longer in line with what used to happen earlier, and the books have not been sufficiently updated. Maybe 3-4 years down the line, the books become as awesome as the exam has become, but then for the time being, that is not ideal. On YouTube channels, my own channel has certain practice playlists for topic wise or at least area wise, within which we have cross-referenced or multiple skills being used at the same time. We have questions of that nature. On Rodha, you have some questions, and on Takshila, you have some basic quant coverage videos in case you want to understand. Takshila people are awesome. Takshila people have explained basic concepts really, really well. But then again, YouTube channels by themselves cannot possibly provide you with the entire coverage You have to do it. The theory coverage separately. YouTube channels are supposed to serve as guidelines for practice alone. Okay. Any channels that you'd like to mention for DILR or VARC prep that I haven't mentioned and you feel there is good, respectable material available there, people? Any channels that we are referring to right now? Okay, let's go. Daily practice sources. Career Launcher has a product by the name of Daily Dose, wherein they provide a test on QA and DILR on one QA and RC on one day, and VA and DILR on one day, and every 2 days, all these four tests. In QA, they have 5 or 6 questions. In DILR sets, they have 5 or 6 questions. In RC, they have 4 or 5 questions. In VA, they have 5 questions. But then this is paid, so I don't know how many of us would have access to that. There is also this wonderful website by the name of Crackyu, Maruti Konduri sir and Sayali Kale ma'am, their venture. They have tests by the name of daily targets. Every day there is a list of questions on a specific topic from QA, list of DILR set, and then RC passage or VA questions. These tests, these are free and they have a validity of 1 day. You can take these tests on the day that they are released. On the day that they are released, you can take these tests, and if you've taken those tests, you would have access to them, the solution and everything until the end of time, as in until the end of the year. If you've missed it, you can't attempt them again. We also have daily tests happening on our website. The validity of the test here is 1 week. If you attempt it, let's say if something gets released on 12th May, the tests only come out on weekdays. If if a test comes out on Friday, it will be available till the next Friday. If it is missed up until the next Friday, then that test will become logged. You can attempt it within the week, and then it will be available to you till the end of CAT prep. So these are 3 daily practice sources. The good thing is in distinction wise, is slightly paid, but it has a mix of questions, not specific topic wise. This is more specific topic wise, but then specific topic is not a topic that you get to select. The topic is predetermined. So let's say 1 day it will be only interest-based questions, 1 day it will be only ratio-based questions. If that is your poison, go for it. Here, daily tests, we have 10 QA questions, 2 DILR sets, 3 RC passages, and 3 VA questions coming out Monday to Friday. And all of it is mixed. There is no topic-wise distribution. Most of these are past year mock questions that people prepare and put up. I don't have direct involvement in that, but it is good work. Lots of people are attempting it. In case you want to, you can go ahead and attempt that. Harsh has asked a question. Anastasia daily DILR 200 should be started at what stage? How to use this particular playlist? See, there is a PDF. You can get to the Telegram group. There is a particular PDF which has all these questions. Some of the sets within the list are extremely easy. Some of the sets within the list are extremely difficult, and a lot of them are moderate or of moderate difficulty level. So what you should be doing is you have that PDF, you solve it, you reach your answers, you open the video, get to the last point. If the time that it took you to solve that question is within 20% plus or minus of the time that the video is there for, then okay, you don't need to see the solution. You can only verify your answers and happily move on. In case it took you more than that, it took you far more time than that, maybe watching the solution would be useful. And at what stage you should be doing it? Only after your basic theory coverage is done, because the daily DILR 200 series is not topic specific. It should only be taken up after your basic theory coverage is done. Okay. Any DILR series that comes on our channel, only after basic theory coverage is done. It is not for beginners, because if beginners start doing work at that level, beginners have absolutely gone haywire in the prep. Okay. Now practice targets. These are notional targets that I feel everyone should be hitting prior to getting to mocks during the mock season, and finally cumulative numbers. Before you attempted 200 RCs or 300 VA questions, you should not be starting with mocks. You should not be starting with mocks. One of the weirdest advices I've heard on the internet is I only did mocks, and a lot of toppers give that. What they forget to add is most toppers are not really preparing for CAT for the first time. They did their theory coverage earlier. Now, in the second season, they only did mocks, but somehow it gets labeled that I only did mocks. See, mocks are great. Mocks are supposed to test your test taking skill, not your basic understanding. So prior to you going for mocks, you have to go through. These are the minimum thresholds that you should keep for yourself. 200 RCs and 300 VA questions. When I say 300 VA questions, the split could be anything. You do 200 parajumbles, 100 summary. That is also fine. But do at least these many questions before you move on to mocks. Because prior to this, within mocks, what is going to mostly happen? Understand, mocks are extremely emotionally volatile outcomes. You get a good score, you feel very happy, and very few people really get happy with that. But you get a bad score, you feel the world is about to end, your entire year will go for a waste. I should have perhaps prepared for bank, PO, SSC. All sorts of wonderful thoughts come to your head because the testing that you're doing is before you're prepared. So go through at least these many questions before taking mocks so that you would be in a good place. You're actually testing the knowledge that you've accumulated instead of simply engaging in testing without really preparing for it. Similarly, for DILR, go through at least 200 sets. For QA, go through at least 1500 questions. When I say spread proportionally, of course, a greater proportion of the questions that you practice would be from arithmetic, then algebra, then geometry, then a smaller proportion from modern maths and number systems. But do at least 1500 questions. Hi. The above targets are outside of classroom sheets and mocks. Remember, the questions that you do for in classroom sheets or the questions that you do within a mock test, they are not really to be counted here. These are practice targets. These are entirely practice targets. You should be how many mocks to take and how many questions to do that. The work there is separate. You have to do that work in addition to your practice targets. See, these numbers are of course prescriptive and always more the better, but not at the cost of genuine understanding. Some of us may be extremely gifted at language. So perhaps even after doing 100 RCs, you get to a point. Even after doing 100 RCs, you get to a point where you feel you are fairly proficient and you can start your testing phase, and that is fine. These numbers are more for middle of the pack, people who are in the, let's say, 70 to 90 percentile range, those who need to that extra push in order to get into the range that they would want to get into. These numbers are prescriptive for the 72 percentile target market, not for those who are extremely gifted. There are certain extremely gifted, rare few individuals who don't even take a single mock before CAT and then ace it. And then there are those who take thousands upon thousands of questions. See, if you've gone through thousands upon thousands of questions in the right manner while learning from them, then it is wonderful. If you haven't go, if you're as in if you've only rushed through the questions because you had to hit a certain number, then the entire exercise is futile. Now, when I say during mock season, this list of questions during mock season, what I mean here is when you take mocks, there are going to be certain learnings that you have about yourself. There are certain areas and topics, let's say genre-wise RCs, or I need to do more parajumbles because in parajumbles I get a lot of questions wrong, or I need to do more fill in the blank paragraph type questions because I get those wrong. These are more remedial sets and remedial questions that you should be going through. By the time you appear for CAT, if you have done this much practice, and remember this much practice is in addition to all the mocks that you've taken, in addition to all the tests that you have gone through, the sectionals or the full length mocks, whatever you attempt, if you've gone through this much work, if you have gone through this much work, then there is no reason you wouldn't do well in the exam. And on the face of it, it looks like very straightforward. Seedha, if I do this much, will it get me there? If you approach it with the mindset that I have to hit this number, then the purpose is defeated. If you do this much work while ensuring that the understanding is never compromised, the comprehension of questions and interpretation of questions is what you're learning, that is when all this exercise, all this practice is actually useful for you. Otherwise, it becomes highly non-utility driven. Uh, Another question Harsh has asked is for Before mocks category, DILR 200 includes topic-wise sets, right? No, it does not include any topic-wise sets. Topic-wise sets are not included in DILR 200. I'm guessing you're meaning 200 sets before mocks. It means 200 sets. This is where your previous year mock papers, if you have access to them, they would be useful. If you go through previous year mock papers, the collection that you get from there, they are extremely good resources. Okay, that is all from my end. If you have any more specific questions, now is the time. If you have any more questions, now is the time. Otherwise, we can end it here. I got 99.93 percentile in VRC last year, CAT with 0 prep. Should I still practice VRC? I'm fairly confident my VRC ability, and I believe if I get less marks or setbacks in practice, it would impact my confidence. Okay. Let's frame it in a separate way, Palash. If you think your VARC abilities are great, why would you shy away from practicing? Also, uh, we've heard of the phrase flash in the pan. No? We have got 99.93 in VARC. We would know flash in the pan. So let's say last year, the CAT paper that you appeared for, you did well. I'm not doubting your abilities in VARC because I have no reason or, let's say, evidence to doubt it. But then, why would that mean? Why would you want to, if you can have a bad day in practice, you could also have a bad day in CAT, which would mean avoiding of practice right now is not sensible at all. Do your practice. Maybe don't do it in a manner where you are keeping track of scores initially, but then there might be certain errors that are present in your style of solving that did not get exposed in the last cycle, did not get exposed in the last paper, but might get exposed in the next cycle. If you don't practice at all, you will never even identify them. And in the CAT exam, if you do poorly, the year-long strategy of avoiding practice would not be good. Nobody's saying you should go through theory material over and over again, but please make sure you do actually engage in practice. Don't skimp out or practice. That wouldn't be advisable. Again, that is my opinion. You can choose to do whatever you want. Any other question? I have practiced on 600 plus LRDI sets, but still it takes 30 plus minutes. Reason is I stuck in condition or middle of set where I couldn't find any link and get confused, which consumes my time. Krish, when you say 600 plus LRDI sets, um, does this include your classroom sheets and mocks or everything from outside? Everything. Then this 600. Acha, I'll also make a prediction. Tell me if this is true. When you're practicing sets from outside for which video solutions are available or solutions are available, you get stuck within 5 minutes. You turn to the solution and view it. Whatever is happening in the solution, you see it from there. Does that happen very often? Or do we struggle with the set for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, however long it takes me? I will struggle with the set first. Once I have made some sort of headway, after 3 hours, if I've reached a point where I cannot make any sense of it, only then will I look at the solution. Is that how we operate? Or at the earliest sign of struggle, we turn to the solution? 1 minute, 1 minute. Then let me finish the discussion with this. I struggle with sets of 15 minutes, then I see the solution. So see, what you're doing is this beautiful art of you have learned to appreciate solutions. You haven't really learned to initiate solutions. See, for DILR sets, especially in the preparation phase, it doesn't matter how much time it takes. It absolutely is immaterial. Even if it takes you 1 hour to do a set, that is fine. But the solution, the initial solution, you have to engage with the set and struggle with the set. At least devote 1 hour to a set. And when I say devote 1 hour to a set, I mean 1 hour of dedicated attempt to solve the set. Not just I started a set at 8. I struggled with it for 10 minutes. Then I went to have water. Then I came back, had dinner. I watched a few YouTube videos. Then it was 9. Now I can see the solution. That is not engaging with the set for 1 hour. If you think a lot of cases are being made, if you think a lot of work needs to be done for the set, do that. Because then when you look at the solution, you would be able to appreciate, oh, this is how I could have reduced my work. This is how I could have narrowed down my task. Or when you look at the solution, okay, this recording style would have enabled me to get to the results that took me 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Because right now what is happening is, because we are engaging or struggling with the set for a very less amount of time, and within this 600 sets, we are also including classroom sets. Classroom sets or sheet sets are not usually the difficult ones. They are basic. They are very, very basic ones. So at least 1 hour you need to engage with the set before looking at the solution. Otherwise, you'll be able to appreciate the solution, never initiate it. For initiation, there has to be engagement from your end wherein you are trying to do it in the most brute force. Hopefully, we know brute force approach to solving things. Brute force is I will list out everything. I will list out everything. I will do everything within my power. And once even that doesn't work, then I will look at the solution. That is the only way we can perhaps work upon our trouble of taking a lot of time. Because once you've gone through, let's say 600 sets outside of classroom, outside of basic sets, then it helps you in two ways. One, there would be a lot of familiarity that happens. There would be a lot of familiarity. There will DILR sets are awesome, but then you cannot create DILR sets out of thin air. There will be some degree of familiarity that would happen that would enable you to get to the point or understanding, okay, this recording style works, this recording style wouldn't work, or okay, I have seen this sort of set earlier, so I know what steps to take next. Apart from that, it also gives you a certain sense of confidence. Because I have gone through so many sets, because I have solved so many sets myself, not that I've only gone through them, I've solved so many sets myself, you would be able to approach the DILR section in a far more confident manner. For a lot of people in the actual CAT exam, the lack of confidence in DILR is more troubling than lack of skill. Hopefully you can relate to it. You don't have to necessarily be able to solve all 4 sets. Even if you pick up 1 or 2 sets and do it appropriately with confidence, you are far more likely to be doing well in the exam. Struggle with the sets for longer before turning to solution. That is the only recourse that I can think of at this point of time. Okay. Is it enough to prepare CAT within 6 months? I am in my 4th year and non-engineering background. And tell me the strategy to prepare quants. Okay. Uh, is it enough to prepare CAT within 6 months? It is enough to prepare for CAT within 1 month. But then it is a function of how prepared you were. Let's say there are certain people who don't prepare for CAT at all, simply turn up on the CAT day because their friends are also there and they do exceedingly well. And then there are people who prepare for CAT for 1.5 years and then they turn up on the CAT day and don't do very well. So making a blanket claim it is enough or not enough, it would depend on what level of critical thinking you are at presently. Additionally, if you're from non-engineering background in your 4th year, I'd be very interested in knowing the course that you're doing. But regardless of where you are, if CAT, see, your decision making should not be if I can do it in 6 months or not. Your decision making should be, does CAT figure in your long-term career path? Is getting to a management course, doing an MBA degree, something that you're planning to do? If yes, right now is the ripe time where you can prepare. If you're in your final year of graduation, at this time, your college load is going to be slightly lower. So do prepare for CAT. Either you crack it in this cycle because you have excellent foundation, you have excellent brain already operational, or even if you don't prepare, even if you don't crack CAT in this cycle, at least you have laid down the foundation for your next cycle. Whether it guarantees success or doesn't guarantee success, that is beyond our control. But the effort that you are able to put in right now, most likely after you graduate, you're going to be working somewhere. When you're working somewhere, you would not have as much time available to prepare. So putting in the work right away would be more preferable. The strategy to prepare quants is simply go through the theory material, practice a lot of questions. See, I hope when I have a certain disdain for the word strategy because strategy If it includes the steps that need to be done in order to excel at something, it is perfectly all right. But more often than not, in the education segment, strategy word has turned into what can I do, or what is the minimum that I need to do in order to excel. There is no minimum. Given this is a competitive exam, if your neighbor is doing more work than you, of course that neighbor is going to excel. So strategy for excelling in quant or VARC or DILR, do the theory coverage. Make sure that your theory coverage is excellent. You understand all the basic things. You don't need to master everything, but you understand all the basic things, and then do a lot of practice. Then do a lot of test taking practice. Then turn up for the exam and do it. These are the simple steps. It's as good as if I need to become a world class batsman, I need to work on my fitness. I need to work on my batting, my hand-eye coordination, my foot movement, and then I have to play a match in which I will do well. Apart from that, there is no secret sauce available. All those highlights and insights of this is how it would work or that is how it would work, I find it very, very disingenuous, but okay. There is no strategy for excelling apart from a lot of hard work. How to prepare for CAT along with job? I gave CAT last year and have workings of close to 3 years. Should I aim for executive MBA or 2 year full-time MBA? Okay, you're getting into. Hello, Soumya, your camera is turned on. I don't know if that is by design. If it is, then great. If not, please turn off. Yes. Uh, how to prepare for CAT along with job? Whatever time you have available. See, there are certain problems we can solve, we solve them. For certain problems we cannot solve, we call them constraints and we have to work around them. If you have a job, uh, you would have, you would certainly have lesser amount of time available than somebody who does not have a job or is a student. But then after the job, however much time you can devote to CAT prep, if you're doing that, well, you would have to cut down on your sleep. One of the one of one of the most jarring thoughts or ideas that I share with my students is, see, I'm sure you've heard of all these beautiful TikTok and Instagram. Follow your passion, follow your this, follow your that. These are rich people talks. People who are right at the beginning phase of their career and are looking to climb up the ladder. You don't have the luxury of having work-life balance. You don't have the luxury of having 8 hours of sleep every night. Anyone who claims that I don't get enough time for cat prep and is sleeping for more than 5.5 hours, you are choosing not to prioritize cat prep. So whatever nature of your job, I don't know if your job takes 12 hours, or if your job takes 14 hours, or if your job takes 8.5 hours, whatever time it takes, after that, ideally dedicate at least 3 to 4 hours, even if it is a 14-hour job, dedicate 3 to 4 hours to cat prep every day. If you can dedicate longer hours, do that. In your prep, in your job, you would we have this beautiful avenue available that we can take breaks every 1 hour or 2 hours. But the cat prep is happening, and this is not just for people who are currently in jobs or outside of it. Try to get to a habit of sitting down for 3 hours, 4 hours. For a lot of people who appear for cat, by the time the quant section rolls around, people are usually fatigued. In order to avoid that, and when you are fatigued, you tend to make more careless errors. In order to avoid that situation where you make more careless errors on account of being fatigued, make it a habit that you are able to sit down for longer hours. It will not start right away. If you try to do it from today onwards or from tomorrow onwards, it is going to be extremely difficult. But what you can do is, let's say if you're in a habit of sitting down for 1 hour, let's extend that to 1 hour, 30 minutes, and then take a 10-minute break. Then again sit down for 1.5 hours, then take a 10-minute break. And then slowly and steadily keep on increasing the time for which you're sitting down in one go and concentrating, because the ability to focus for longer durations is also an extremely important skill when it comes to these entrance tests. Okay, the question from Yash now. I gave CAT last year and I am currently having work ex of close to 3 years. Should I aim for executive MBA or 2 year full-time MBA? These are extremely dicey questions. See, I did my own MBA from FMS after 5 years of working. And I feel I could not have done executive MBA for the simple reason I was not looking forward to working in a corporate. I was teaching prior to doing my MBA, and I've been teaching right after my MBA because I liked teaching. I discovered teaching. I liked teaching. I wanted to do teaching. So for me, going to an executive MBA simply for adding a name at the I have done an MBA from XYZ place was not really the goal. For you, if MBA after let's say an MBA serving a purpose of you going up the corporate ladder, the amount of learnings you would have with a 2 year full-time MBA versus an executive MBA is going to be miles apart. But then if you have narrowed it down, the sort of work that you're doing right now, this is the domain you want to continue working in. This is where you want to rise up the ranks, and your company also kind of funds your executive MBA expenses, then maybe executive MBA is also an option. But then if you want to explore other areas, let's say you're currently working in finance and you also want to give yourself a chance to get into consulting roles, or you also want to give yourself the chance of getting into operations roles or HR roles or strategy roles. If you want to explore other areas, then executive MBA would not help you. Then a 2 year full-time MBA has to be the choice that you have to go. Because only in 2 years, see, when you're doing an executive MBA, you're not participating in corporate competitions. Let's say, I remember there was a senior at FMS. He had 5 years of work ex. Now, usually FMCG companies don't shortlist people for internships or final placements who have more than 2 years of work ex. And when I say FMCG companies, I mean the Procter and Gamble's and ITCs and HULs of the world. For some exceptional candidates, they even extend the work ex limit to 3 years. But then this fellow had 5 years of work ex. And this 5 years of work ex fellow, he wanted to get into marketing desperately. He had that option, or he managed to achieve his aim by winning a lot of corporate competitions. There is a competition by the name of ITC, Interrobank, that happens at prestigious schools. He won that competition. He got a PPI, as in PPI is pre-placement interview. He excelled in that PPI and then managed to get into FMCG despite having 5 years of office. Now, if he had done an executive MBA, he would never have had an option of getting into some other domain. So, if exploring other domains is the target, you have to do a 2 year MBA. Okay, people. Yes, those are all the questions. So, those are all the questions that people have for this cycle. So, Krish, if that is the case, let's practice so much that you don't get a question from a different variety at all. This is why we had the numeric targets. No, if you've gone through, let's say 4,000, 5,000 questions, do you think you're going to get a new variety questions? More often than not, let's say in CAT last year, people are saying, I'm sure those of us who have appeared for CAT last year would claim CAT's quant section was very difficult. But if you go back and look at the paper again, yes, it was more difficult compared to the earlier year papers, but the difficulty was not because the calculations were weird, or the difficulty was not because they have asked new things. It is more because they have a given question in layers. First level, you have to solve something. Second level, you have to solve something. In some cases, third level, you have to solve something. It is still the same ideas. It is still the same concepts that are being tested. It is just that you had layers to the questions, which is what made questions difficult. As long as you've solved a plethora of questions, nothing is going to surprise you. Nothing is going to make you, oh my God, what have they asked in the question? Okay. Yes, which sector companies do people with 3 to 4 years of work ex get? It would depend on what sort of work experience you have and what sort of, let's say I worked for 4 years in call centers, then the sort of shortlist I'd get, and I worked for 4 years in strategy consulting, the kind of shortlist I'd get, that is going to be drastically different now. So it's not like you see why FMCG companies don't prefer people with high amounts of workings, or at least in most cases. There are certain exceptional individuals who are still shortlisted despite having high workings. Is for the simple reason that in the initial phase, the FMCG companies make you do a lot of grunt work. They make you go into the markets and talk to the shopkeepers, and then people with a lot of work, it's people who have worked for a longer period of time, tend to not be amenable to such an idea, and therefore they have this aversion to taking people with high amounts of workers. But then let's say somebody has been working in the marketing domain only for 5 years. This person would already have that experience. This person would know what marketing entails. Then that person also gets a shortlist. There is no hard and fast rule that 3 to 4 years working of people will get only shortlist from certain domains. You can get all sorts of roles depending upon what kind of work ex you have and what sort of work you've done in college. If I participated in a lot of consulting strategy based case study competitions and won in them, then despite not having any work ex, I can get into consulting roles. Of course, based on the achievements that I have in such competitions. Yes, Mohammed. Do you have something to ask or was it an accidental unmuting? Debayan, I think this should be all for today. Are you around?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So I think this should be all for today.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining in. We'll have the next session on 26th of May. We'll share the invites and everything in advance. Hope to see you there. Thank you once again, sir.
Okay.